Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights.
Today we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are recording. Jenna is on Darug and Gundungurra land, and I am recording on the land of the Ngunnawal peoples.
Hey everyone, we have some announcements today. First of all, I am very proud to say we are finalists in the Best Sex and Relationships Podcast category of the Australian Podcast Awards 2021. We're super excited about that, and especially because I think the rules were you had to have 6 episodes out by a certain date, and that date was just after our 6th episode came out. So we only just scraped in terms of eligibility. So we're really excited about that announcement. There is also a Listener's Choice Award. So if you go to australianpodcastawards.com/vote, you can type in somebody you love and our name will come up as an option, and you can tell them that you love us, but that is obviously optional.
We also want to let you know that after this episode, it will be the end of our first season. We will be wrapping up and taking a couple of weeks off just to catch our breath after what has been, I'm sure you will agree, a wonderful first season, jam-packed full of excitement. We have plenty coming after the break, and we hope you come back and join us then.
So season 2 will begin on November 25th. And if you are missing us in that time, you are more than welcome to head over to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/somebodyyoupod. We have 3 bonus episodes on there currently, and soon there will be 4. So you can listen to those, or you can even watch them if you're one of our $20 or $50 patrons. Quick trigger warning, we do discuss sexual assault in this episode. So, for our final episode of Season 1, we are going to continue our Just the Tips series with some more tips for the clients of sex workers. As we said in part 1, please keep in mind that all we can really do is give you advice on seeing us. I think that generally these tips are useful for anyone who is engaging in the sex industry, but they're definitely tailored towards those people who might be seeing independent Australian full-service sex workers like Holly and I. In part 1, we covered the initial contact and some of the stuff leading up to the booking. Today, we're going to be discussing the booking itself, and then in part 3, we'll be talking about after the booking and some other bits and pieces.
We're going to kick off today with getting there, getting to the appointment, getting to your provider's residence, all of the things involved with that.
A really common source of frustration for sex workers who offer in-calls, which is where the client comes to the worker, and particularly in states where in-calls are illegal or sex work in general is illegal, is clients who don't follow the instructions to get to your location. I think this happens so much. My theory is that it's mostly because of either nerves or because the blood in the body at that time is directed slightly away from the head. That's my theory, because it happens to people. I meet the client, I'm like, wow, you're a really well-adjusted, intelligent man, and yet you could not follow the very, very, very basic instructions. So I think that there's a lot of nerves at play. There's perhaps overthinking, brains getting in the way, all that sort of stuff. And I'm really understanding of that. But the problem is it can actually have quite serious negative consequences for sex workers, which can include being asked to leave the establishment if they're staying in a hotel or a hired apartment space. It can mean having their lease broken if they're renting, attracting attention from the neighbours, and often, all these things will happen with there being no refund either. So a classic example is that most modern apartment buildings, for instance, will have some kind of intercom system. So everything's really intense with security these days, right? And so generally, in order to be let up the elevator, you need to ring the intercom and have somebody in the apartment press a button that allows you into the building and up the elevator to their room. And great, good security. It means that people can't just wander in off the street and go up to level 20 and go wandering around to people's houses. So what I always do is I send through instructions, just a short paragraph that says, you know, the entrance is on this street. Please press this number into the intercom. I will answer. I'll let you in the front door. Then you want to turn left and the elevators will be in front of you. Then you press this button, you know, all that sort of stuff. When you step out of the elevator, turn right and my apartment will be right there. I cannot tell you how many clients either sneak in the front door behind someone else, like a resident of the apartment building or whatever is going in and they jump in behind them, or maybe the front door is propped open, so they just walk in, or they try to get in the front door some other way, or they find a different door and get in, and then they go straight to the elevator. I then get a text message saying the elevator doesn't seem to be working. And I'm always like, what? How do you know if the elevator's working or not? You haven't rung the intercom yet. I haven't let you in the building. As far as I know, you're still outside. And I usually respond and say, oh, but you haven't rung the intercom. And they go, oh, no, I just snuck in behind someone. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't let you up the elevator if you don't ring that's why I gave you the instructions to do that. And the awkward thing about all of that is the reception staff can see all of this happening. They watch this guy looking really nervous. He's probably got a cap and sunglasses on half the time because he's trying to be discreet, which ironically makes you look like the shadiest fuck in town. They see you looking at your phone and looking and trying to make sure no one sees you, like you're some spy in a movie, getting into the elevator, trying to press the button a bunch of times, it becoming apparent that that's not going to work, then going back out, pressing, and they know what's going on. And the problem is, if you have that happen a number of times, they're going to start to put two and two together, and that actually puts us at risk. So as much as you're going to feel like a bit of a knob, and we're going to be forgiving of that, but on top of the embarrassment, there's also a side of it puts us in danger.
I think the important thing is definitely to not loiter, because loitering is what catches people's eye. They go, oh, this person doesn't look like they should be here, and that stands out. So when you're given instructions to a sex worker's apartment or house or whatever it is, they're usually pretty clear, but people start to overthink it and they go, well, you've told me the building, but not which number, but then what? And it's like, well, if we give you too much at once, it overcomplicates it and you stress out and something goes wrong. So often we'll give you as much as you need to begin the process, and then we'll say, when you get here, do this, and that helps. I do think it is a thing of nerves. I think people get excited. They've got a lot going on. People who've come to visit me before for a booking will notice when I put them in the shower, because I've got the one towel rail, my towel is also hanging up near it. And every time I put the client's towel on there, I will say to you about 3 or 4 times as you're getting in the shower, I'll say, this is your towel, just letting you know, reminding you the purple towel is your towel, this one here, this is your towel. And I'll say it several times, not in a condescending way, but just because I know you're thinking, you're excited, you're nervous, it's all going on. And I know so many times it just slips from your head and you get out of the shower and you go, oh, fuck, which towel was mine? And I feel like it's pretty obvious because it's the one that feels fresh, not like I've used it. But this is a whole other topic of discussion. Yeah. The point being that I get that when you're nervous, you get a little bit overwhelmed and things slip out of your head. But when we've sent pretty clear text message saying these are the instructions to get to the place, just try to follow them as best you can. It really does help keep us safe and cause less stress. When I worked in a hotel, I would often say to the clients, come straight into the lift. I worked in a hotel that didn't have swipes in the lift, so I would say, just come up, come to this door and tap very lightly. And some of the clients would instead get onto the ground floor and they'd stand in front of the reception desk and they'd sort of wander around with their phone, and then they'd sort of go to the lift and come up to me, and that just looks really dodgy. It's the sense of purpose. Sit in your car, read the text message again, get across it, and then walk straight in and do whatever it is that you've been asked to do. And we get it. Things happen. Sometimes you have a little ditzy moment, and we all do it in life, and we're not going to drag you over the coals for it. It's fine. But generally, just try to help us out a little bit. Working from home, as I do in a residential property, and as Jenna often does when she's based at home, we also, again, give our clients pretty clear instructions on what to do. I often suggest to park in a particular spot. And I've had clients then who get taxis who frequently pull up in front of my neighbour's house. And I've said, can you please stop doing that? Because it just draws a lot of attention. It's not that I don't think my neighbours know what I'm up to. It's not that I think that they'll care really in my circumstance. I'm very fortunate. I don't think it's a big deal. But it's not a comfortable thing if your neighbours are constantly seeing taxis pull up out the front of their house and go to that girl across the road. It just draws too much attention. So when you're given instructions, and particularly then when I've said, hey, in future, can you make sure that X, Y, Z, that you just do that. But, as we always say, the people listening are probably not the people going to be doing that.
Yeah.
The people who do it are the ones I have to remind every single time. So, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly. I need to make a note on the towel thing. I find it so amusing, and it's very endearing because I know it's just nerves and being overwhelmed and stuff. And I don't know if this is just you and I imagine a lot of sex workers do this. The clients' towels are always a different colour because I find that I feel like that makes it easier for them. So when I'm working from home, I have my towel I have a couple of different sets, but the bath mat, the hand towel, the face washer and the towel will all be the one colour because that's all my stuff, and that's hung up and it's been used because obviously I have a shower just before the client comes, so the towel is wet, but the client's towel is a grey, not fancy, but it's a nice towel that's folded up neat and kind of prepared for them. And so I always say that towel there's for you in the basket, and that's the grey towel is for you, and it surprises me. Not crazy often, but how often I go in there and realize that they've used my towel, and I don't mind them using my towel, except that they've stepped out of the shower, used a towel, and gone, she's given me a wet, filthy towel. I feel really bad. I'm I had this beautiful one that's been fresh out of the wash and folded up for you, and you've just used my skanky old wet one that's been hanging there for a week. I feel really bad.
It's just so nervous, and that's why I'm always I make such. And I think so many of them must think, does she think I'm an idiot? She just told me 5 times that that's my towel. But I'm I just know that so many of them. Yeah, but then
they still get the wrong one.
Yeah, exactly. I know so many get out and they just freak out, and I know that they're standing there alone in that bathroom, staring at these 2 towels, going, "Oh fuck," I feel so bad.
And they're going, "Do I put my clothes back on now?
Yes.
Do I put my undies on? Do I put a towel around me? Do I just walk in there naked?" I know that there's all these thoughts going through their mind at that time. Oh, the poor things. So generally I would say, in life, usually it's kind of considered a faux pas to arrive somewhere late. But in the sex industry, the faux pas really is more around arriving early.
I will give you the stink eye if you arrive early, because I have everything timed to the minute, and I am very organised with how I do that. Particularly, I have a certain amount of time allocated for doing my hair, my makeup, getting everything ready, trying to tidy the house. And if you arrive early, it throws me into disarray. Look, it's not the biggest deal, but it just isn't very polite. And I'd actually prefer you arrive 5 minutes late than 5 minutes early. Sharp is preferred, but I really don't like early. And I know people mean well when they do it, but I'm also well, you're going to have to sit in your car and wait for 5 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, it's a massive deal. My instructions to get to my place always end with "please don't arrive early" with a smiley face. And I have had a couple of people comment and they go, oh, okay, I won't be early. Oh, what's that about? And I hope it's not too harsh. I thought the smiley face, got rid of any ill will. But it's a massive problem. So there's a whole different reasons why arriving early can be an issue. One of them is that I often, getting ready for bookings, I clean everything up, I do my hair and makeup, I lay out my lingerie, and then I jump in the shower maybe 10 minutes before the booking, 5-10 minutes before, and I have a quick rinse so that when the client arrives, I'm super fresh. So if you arrive at my door while I'm in the shower, obviously that's a problem. Or if I'm just stepping out or just getting in, that's all a bit awkward. Also, in terms of lingerie, some of that stuff is tricky as fuck to put on. And I find it is so often the clients who have requested that I wear stockings and suspenders who will turn up early. And I don't know if you all have ever tried to put stockings and suspenders on, but it's a fucking nightmare. They are so fiddly, and when you are stressed and or sweaty, it's a whole other level of nightmare. And the doorbell's rung, and I'm trying to do these little fiddly clips up around my bum, and it's just such a thing. And I'm if you have specifically asked me to put on stockings and suspenders, you cannot be early. That is absolutely unacceptable. I can't make that work. I'm just not magical. But on a bigger kind of level, I guess, issue is you don't know how long the sex worker is leaving in between clients or in between their personal partners or friends leaving the place. So a lot of sex workers will leave, maybe an hour in between bookings, in which case, that's a lot of leeway. Some will leave 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're arriving at their place 10 minutes early and the last guy overstayed by a few minutes, you're massively running the risk of you guys having like a real fun little interaction in the driveway, which, not the end of the world, but I feel like most people aren't super into that. Just the other day, I had a client who arrived early, which I didn't realize. And then when he came in, he was like, "Oh, I think I saw your husband." And I was like, "Oh, that's nice." He was like, "Yeah, he was bringing the bins in." And I was like, "Fuck, yep." Well, he was 10 minutes ago bringing the bins in, popped outside to bring the bins in and then jumped in his car to leave because he knew I had, this booking happening. And it's not the biggest deal. The client was like, "You've got a very attractive husband." And I was like, "That's lovely, but bit strange. Bit weird that you sat there in your car watching him doing the bins. Bit weird." And it's like, I don't know, it's just all a bit awkward. Like, it's just a bit... Ugh. So I think it's a risky business, rocking up early to a sex worker. I do know, like, I'm somebody, I hate being late, right? And I usually arrive places early. I would suggest in that case, driving around the corner, or if you're in like a city area or something, going into a cafe or something like that, sending a text that says, "Hey, I'm ready, but I'm waiting around the corner in my car, or I've just popped into blah blahs down the road. I'm totally happy to wait, but I can come in early if that works for you."
Yeah, I like that.
Because you never know. Yeah, I think that's really useful. Like, there have been times, particularly for me when I'm on tour, where I have gone, actually, I am ready, and it would actually suit me better to bring this booking a little bit further forward, that I'll have a little bit more time afterwards. That works well for me. So yeah, come on up. But just rocking up and being like, "Hey," but I think particularly in residential areas, because if there's some guy standing on my doorstep for 20 minutes, my neighbors are going to know, like, that's odd. And if that's the thing that's happening regularly, they're going to think that's a bit weird. So, yeah, especially because normally that dude is looking really nervous and he keeps checking his phone and it's just all very awkward.
The other thing to keep in mind is that if you are arriving late for a booking, there is every chance that the provider will be ending your booking at the scheduled time. So if you've booked an hour and you're 10 minutes late, you may only get 50 minutes of that booking as a result. And providers generally aren't doing that to punish you or anything like that. It's just that we have strict schedules often that we're trying to fit in with, and we have already waited the 10 minutes of that time for you. So we're doing the best that we can. In my experience, most providers will do what they can to accommodate you, and particularly if you're a regular, once again, we get that things happen and we've got that established rapport, then we can see what we can work out. But that is dependent upon the situation and upon the provider. And then we come to my favourite part, the payment of the booking. With most providers, you will be paying cash. That's what most sex workers prefer. There are some out there, and it's an increasing number of workers, who are requesting payment via electronic means. They will give you the instructions for that and time for it to clear accordingly. We do prefer that you provide us with the exact cash. The expectation is that you will hand that cash over pretty much as soon as you arrive. Often we will count the money almost immediately, especially in front of you, just to make sure that there's not any discrepancies. Don't be offended, that's par for the course. Basically, it can be really awkward if you leave the money, pop the client in the shower, go to count it, and then realise it's not all there. Then you have to call the client back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, there was something missing." And it just feels like, maybe did you take some, or maybe, I don't know, it's just a lot more of a clearer situation if you count the money together and you can both establish what is there. Some workers prefer for you to leave the money in an envelope on a table. Some prefer that you hand it directly to in their hands. They'll make it clear if they're particular about those sorts of things. If that sort of thing is important to the worker, they'll let you know. But otherwise, however you hand it over, just make sure you sort it out pretty much soon after you arrive, because if we have to ask for it, it gets a bit awkward.
I think a lot of clients often feel awkward about the money part of things. And they'll often sort of go, oh, can I get this out of the way? These days I have a lot of clients who just transfer the money in advance because they just don't want to have to deal with it in person, which that's absolutely fine in my case. But I also just don't think there's any need for it to be awkward. My logic is always, if you don't feel awkward when you hand over your card or the cash when you buy your groceries, then why do you feel awkward handing over your cash to me? You know, it's you're paying for the service. And I think some people sort of say, oh, it just, you know, it reminds me that it's transactional. And I'm like, well,
it is.
It is. So I don't know what you like. I'm not sure why you want it to not be. Because, I guess I can understand maybe why you might want it to not be. But it is what it is. So you're here, that's what you've chosen to do, and that's what's happening. You are paying me, and, well, I won't say I'm fucking you because that might not be happening, but chances are you're paying me and some kind of fuckery is happening.
Fuckery.
So we've covered this on the show a little bit before, that so many clients are really worried that we're not going to like the way that they look. You need to trust me when I say that we are far more concerned about how you will smell.
I'm not.
Yeah, okay. So Holly can't smell, but not literally everyone else can. I shouldn't be so ableist, but most other people can. So most sex workers care about how you smell. With Holly, do whatever you want. But for the rest of us, let me tell you that you need to smell good, or at least have an absence of smell. Now, you know, especially if it's an in-call, you're going to the provider, you may not be able to, you might be coming straight from work, or you might be coming from a long drive or whatever. So if you're not able to arrive freshly washed, that's perfectly fine. We're totally cool with that. But in that case, what you'll need to do is make sure that you do it on arrival. So most providers will have things for you to use. They will have a shower, soap and or body wash. They will likely have mouthwash. A lot of us also have like disposable toothbrushes and what's it called? Toothpaste. And even things like plastic combs and stuff that you can use, that you can make use of to make yourself feel all fresh and nice. Not always, but at the end of the day, most people are going to have soap at the very least, and probably mouthwash as well. It is expected that you'll have a shower at the start and probably the end of your booking, depending on if you're just going straight home. Like, I think most people are fine with you not necessarily having a shower at the end, but it's pretty standard that people do. If you're having a booking with me, you are going to want a shower at the end because I'm going to come all over you. And that's, occasionally some people like to just kind of bake in it on their way home in the car or whatever. I don't know. If that's your thing, that's cool. But anyway, so these showers, both the one at the beginning and the end, in private work, are generally considered to be included in the booking time. So I do understand that as a result of that, you don't want to stand around in the shower like having the most luxurious shower ever when you're like, well, I am paying for this time. But at the same time, if you're in there for 20 seconds and you come back out, we're going to be like, did you wash your ass though? So please wash your ass. We covered this in our first episode, second episode?
Yeah. I don't care if you smell bad. As mentioned, I can't smell you, but I will know if you have a dirty butt, and that's super important to me. Wash your hands, scrub your fingernails, wash your butt crack, get soap all over you, and that's massive. And a bit of mouthwash doesn't hurt.
I think everyone has different opinions when it comes to like cologne and perfumes and stuff like that. Personally, I'm quite sensitive, so unlike Holly, smells do get up in my nose. So overwhelming colognes and stuff I find a little bit unpleasant personally. But more than that, my issue is when people have put cologne heavily on their body. I understand that you put it on your neck, I guess, but when someone gets out of the shower and then I'm kissing their neck and I can taste cologne, which is not a nice, it tastes like bug spray.
It's the worst.
And I'm like, well, you didn't really wash in the shower, did you? Because why is it still all over you? Why do you taste like death on your neck? And then occasionally, this is very rare, but sometimes men seem to put it on their downstairs bits.
Yes!
And then their dick tastes like fly spray, and I don't know what that's about. And I don't like it, and I would like it to stop. Thank you.
One of my clients puts talcum powder down there. I don't know if he comes from 1600s Europe or something, you know, and they powder their penis or something. And I'm like, well, you clearly didn't wash it because it's talcum powder.
No, that's a thing, though. People put talc on their genitals to, like, soak up sweat. It's a thing.
No,
That's
it is.
That's 100% a thing.
but not enough to not wash it off when you go. And I still think talking your penis is weird. Sorry, cancel me. Cancel me, everyone. Controversial statement on our final episode of the season. Talking your genitals. I get like you use like a little bit of like tap a little bit on there, or like you've got what's that cream that you used to be able to use to prevent chafing and stuff. Cool.
Or like chub rub stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but not like dousing it. I mean I've gone down there and it's like a judge's wig. It's like powdered like nobody is. It's crazy. Like a bread roll, flour on top.
As you said, if you're stepping out of the shower and there's powder all over your dick, what
What did you do?
If anything, it should be a paste, shouldn't it? Like if you're mixing flour and water, like
appealing.
Go dick.
That's the one that then always pushes me for BBBJ without paying extra. And I'm like, of all the cocks I want to suck, it's not old pasty dick.
Not talc dick. No.
Not talc dick.
I think a big question. Okay, so I know that this is a big question for some clients because I know that Mr. Love has gone through this when he's gone to see sex workers.
Throw him under the bus.
He's got a pretty good in because he'll be like, Jenna, what do I do? And I can obviously give him some good guidance. So I like to think he is an A++ client. But one of the first things he said was, what do I do when I step out of the shower? Do I just walk back into the room completely naked? Because that it can feel quite confronting to some people. It can feel kind of rude to just be like, here's my naked body. Do I put a towel around me? Do I put my clothes back on? I've had a number of guys say, am I supposed to put my clothes back on? I've had a number of guys put their clothes back on or just put like their undies back on. And so it's a big question. I would say generally putting your clothes back on somewhat defeats the purpose of the shower.
I would agree.
Say if you're having a shower because you're a bit damp and then you put your damp clothes back on, that's maybe not your best move. I would also say that walking back into the room naked is not rude in this context.
No.
Right. I know that if you're in a relationship or you're dating, it might be weird but that's what we're here for. Like, it's fine. It's what we're here for.
I like it.
I don't know about you, but my normal general kind of way of doing things is to be fully clothed when someone arrives or when I arrive. And then while they're in the shower, I'll take off my clothing and just leave my underwear on. Because I feel like if they come out of the shower naked and I'm still fully dressed, I'm like, oh, sorry, one of us is very overdressed for this occasion. So I try to like balance it out a bit. Do you do that or is that just me?
No, I don't do that. I think I think a lot of people do that. I think I'm a little bit weird in that I don't expect them to come out fully naked. I want to be a little bit careful saying that because I think if you do, I'm definitely not going, that's weird. I'm going, yes, let's get it on. It's exciting. But I generally think you'd come in with the towel around you, and that's fine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't like that because then inevitably they drop it on the ground, and then at the end of the booking when they go to have another shower, their towel's all crumpled up and wet, and then I feel like I've got to offer them a new towel.
That's fair as well. Yeah, I see that. So I usually keep my clothes on so that then they can have the experience of undressing me as they wish because I get a lot of clients who I start to get undressed and they go, no, leave that on for a bit longer. And it sort of builds.
I get that too.
So I give them that. But if they're immediately like seeming really uncomfortable about their nudity, then I'll start getting some layers off.
Get them off, take it off.
Yeah. I sort of go with what I feel the client wants. Yeah, I'm cruisy.
But I would definitely say, that it at that point, I think the answer is it's whatever you're most comfortable with. Generally, I would say putting your clothes back on. A lot of providers might have not an issue with it, but they might just go, oh, okay, yeah. But coming in naked, coming in with a towel around your waist, I would just say it's not weird, it's normal. And I understand that the situation itself is a bit unusual, but from our perspective, we're very, very used to it. That's what we do every day. So it's not a big deal for us.
In regards to sexual health, asking a provider how long ago they were tested or if they're clean or can you see their test results, all those sorts of things are really offensive. You'll find some providers will immediately cut you off and say they refuse to see you as a result if you ask those sorts of questions for a number of reasons. Firstly, because you just seem like the sort of person we don't want to spend time with. Those sorts of questions, although you might feel that they're totally valid and that they're fair questions, they are intrusive. They're also indicative of an underlying idea that sex workers are somehow diseased. We've talked about this on other episodes. It's just offensive. We're not asking you for your test results. We are using other ways to make healthy decisions when we're engaging in sexual activities as best we can. It also sometimes can flag that you may be wanting to engage in unsafe sex with us.
Yeah, that's often my biggest concern. I'm like, oh, why would you want to know that? You know, if you're going to be using barrier methods of contraception with me, you're getting tested regularly, I'm getting tested regularly, and the fact that sex workers consistently have lower rates of STI transmission than the general public, then why are you wanting to see my test results or to know when I last got tested? Because that makes me go, are you going to try something unsafe with me and put me in a position where I feel uncomfortable? And it also, to me, shows a serious lack of sexual health awareness because looking at someone's anonymous test results, because we're not going to give you our test results in our legal name, obviously. So looking at someone's anonymous test results from a few weeks ago does absolutely nothing. You might think that that gives you peace of mind, but it shouldn't. That should not give you peace of mind because that doesn't mean a thing. I could have had bareback sex with 20 different men in the past since I got those tests done. Like it doesn't show you anything.
Obviously, it's great to be aware of the risks that surround sex and trying to have safer sex, but there never will be entirely safe sex. There are ways to mitigate the risks involved in sexual activity, and we obviously employ those as much as we can in our work, and you, I'm sure, will know some ways that we do. But yeah, sexual health test results are not very reliable in these circumstances, and particularly, as Jenna said, when they could be from weeks ago and you don't know what activity somebody's had since. So they're not really reliable in this situation. We do take our sexual health and health in general very seriously. This is what our livelihood depends upon. If we have a sexual health issue, then we can't work and it causes us to lose income, and we don't have sick pay, we don't have any of those fallbacks. So it's very important for us to take care of ourselves. And in general, sex workers tend to have a very high level of sexual health knowledge and resources available to us.
I feel like I want to say now, like the reason we're sharing this information is because we know that it isn't second nature to people who aren't sex workers. So I really don't want, I know that neither Holly or I wants to come across as though we're going, you shouldn't do this, you should do this. But like, we're not trying to dictate anything, but we're trying to give our perspective so that you might have an understanding. You know, when people ask me how long ago I was last tested for STIs or if they can see a list of my test results, I refuse to see them. And I know that they might not realize why. They may not know that they've asked a really offensive question. And that's not their fault. You know, they aren't to know everything. But that's kind of the whole reason we're doing this podcast, and we're trying to get, you know, a bit more literacy around dealing with sex workers in any context, whether you're a client, whether you are a non-sex worker, a civilian, you know, a doctor, whatever. So yeah, don't take this as a list of do's and do nots. Take it more as an insight into the way sex workers may interpret some of the things that you do and do not.
Rather than asking your sex worker for their test results or when they were last tested, the best ways to look after your own sexual health are to use barrier protection and get yourself tested regularly.
COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the sex industry, and snap lockdowns and travel restrictions mean that there are times when sex workers require emergency financial relief in order for them and their dependents to stay safe, housed, and fed.
Sex workers don't get sick or holiday pay, and many have no savings to fall back on. The stigma and discrimination that we face means that some have no proof of earnings to access government support, and of course migrant workers are often forgotten.
Scarlet Alliance and their state and territory member organisations joined together to create an ongoing fund that is hosted on the website Chuffed, that's CHUFFED.
Donations are tax deductible, 100% of funds raised go directly to sex workers in need, and most weeks the amount of people applying outweigh the amount of funds raised, and sadly people have to be turned away. The link to this fund is in our show notes.
I think we've talked about this a fair bit on the show before, but a common frustration for a lot of sex workers is the client's really strong desire to give pleasure and to give orgasms, or for the sex worker to orgasm in the session. Now, we've talked before about how pleasure does not necessarily equal orgasm, and orgasms don't necessarily equal pleasure. So first of all, it's sort of a false barometer of whether the person you're with is having a good time. So it's a good thing that you want to ensure that the provider has an enjoyable time during your booking. That's good. I've said this before. Congratulations, you're officially not a psychopath. Excellent. But that being said, sex is complicated, bodies are complicated, and it just is never that straightforward. I'm saying this as somebody who can have an orgasm when the wind changes direction. It's incredibly easy for me to come. But I've been with so many people for whom that is not the case. I have a large number of clients who sometimes orgasm in a session, sometimes don't, some who likely almost never do. And, I assume they keep coming back, they keep paying me money and spending time with me. So all I can do is assume that means that they're having a nice time. I feel it's not my place to expect an orgasm from somebody that I'm intimate with. And I understand, I fully understand the desire to give pleasure. And I think that it is really amplified when seeing a sex worker because people are really concerned about whether we are doing this job by choice, whether we have been coerced, whether we really want to be there. All that sort of stuff is playing around in their mind. So I think a lot of people have a real neediness to make sure that the sex worker that they're seeing is having a good time. And that's great. You do want them to have a nice time. But expecting that means that they'll have orgasms, I personally think is just asking too much. And Holly and I both are incredibly orgasmic women. So it's not that, we're not even speaking kind of from personal experience, but it's just a lot to, you can't base your own value in bed on whether other people are having orgasms when they're around you. I don't do that. I'm literally a professional fucker, and there are people who aren't able to orgasm when I'm professionally fucking them.
Are you thinking about asking your sex worker some really personal questions? Stop right there. We have some things to say to you. Obviously, we've discussed time and time again about sex workers having their own physical boundaries, and obviously we have some emotional ones as well. It's a real mixed bag in terms of how different sex workers feel about discussing their personal lives. Some don't wish to discuss anything personal about themselves. Some have aspects of their life that they don't wish to discuss. Maybe they have children or family or a job or something they don't want to talk about, so they will intentionally leave those things out of discussions. And then people like myself and Jenna will put everything out there on display, pretty much everything in our lives for public consumption.
Pretty much, but everyone has boundaries. For instance, things like our legal names. That's something
that's a huge one for me. Yeah,
that's huge. Right. Yeah. And it's not uncommon for clients to say, oh, what's your real name? Like, if I wanted you to know my real name, you would know my real name. Like, what do you think the point of me having a pseudonym is if I'm just going to not use it and use my real name instead? Like, obviously there's a reason why I don't use my legal name. Whether you understand that or not, I don't care. But it's weird to ask for a different name. The other really, really common question that I get, I don't know if you get this as much or not, let me know. I'm dying to find out.
I'll tell you.
So common, and I cannot believe how common it is, from people in bookings and from people outside of bookings as well, is what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
Yeah.
I get that question so often. And I please don't ask anyone that. Ever. Yeah. Don't ask anyone that question. For one, especially don't ask that question when you are naked and intimate with somebody that you met 10 minutes ago and your dick's in them. Like, it's not a good question. Yeah. I think what really gets me about it, because I am a bit of an open book and I am happy to share what has happened to me, and I always answer the question honestly, and they are always taken aback. every single time. They say, oh, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? Or have you ever had something really bad happen to you? And I go, I guess being raped at work was the worst thing. Every time they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, that's the answer to the question. You like, that's what you wanted to know, isn't it? You wanted to know if I'd been raped or bashed. That's the question. You are like, you're a hooker, so what, have you had one of those things happen to you? I answered it how you expected it to be, and you're gobsmacked, and now I feel guilty for bringing the fucking conversation down. I've made it a sour mood, and I will not take responsibility for that because I have not. You have made it a sour mood. You've gone there. I've answered the question honestly, and now you're uncomfortable because you can't deal with the reality that it is what it is, and I'm a woman, and chances are most of us have been sexually assaulted. Sorry, welcome. That's the facts.
I don't get asked that very often at all, but sometimes clients that I've had as regulars for a very long time, it will come up in conversation as part of discussing our lives and maybe my journey in the industry and things like that. But I'm very lucky. I don't seem to get asked that a lot, which is good because I feel like my response would be, I don't think that's really appropriate conversation. And anyone who's spent time with me knows that I am so fucking nosy. So I always will ask clients really detailed questions, particularly when they're telling a story and I want to know clarification on things. But I will always say, if this is crossing a boundary for you or if you're not comfortable to discuss, just say to me, I don't really want to talk about that. And that's totally fine. And I don't often assert that myself because I'm really happy, as you said, being an open book. That's cool. But that would be a thing that I think I would say, I think generally we don't need to talk about.
Well, to me, I don't understand why people ask that question. Yeah. That's what gets me. You either are asking that question because you want me to say, no, nothing, I'm a happy hooker and my life is perfect. You don't need to have any guilt about any choices you've ever made. Or they're mining me for trauma porn because they, and either way, I'm like, well, none of those is appropriate. They either want to be assured or they want to hear the deep and dark gross stuff.
I think at its core, you're correct. I think that people consciously just feel like they're curious, but when it comes down to what about, then I guess you're right, and that's pretty.
Pretty
sad.
I would never ask that of a police officer or a firefighter. I would never say, "What's the most horrible experience you've had?" I think that is so because it's bad. It's bad.
That's true, but I think that a lot of people, particularly people like yourself and myself, that are very open about sex work and about that we love it and this is our career and all that sort of stuff, it may seem to people that we are the lucky ones, that we're one of those, we're people who it's never happened to. And so I suppose for a lot of them, they may think that we are untraumatized and that we have not been affected by these sorts of things. And it just might not have crossed their mind, which is, then, well, why would you ask? But I think if you don't think that anything bad's happened, they might think the story is going to be, oh, someone I didn't really like showed up and I told them to go away, and that it's going to be quite harmless and funny and a little bit suspenseful, but not traumatic. And so when they know that, and it's not a sex work inherent thing, it's often just part of being a woman, that the amount of women that have been sexually assaulted is much higher than you probably realise. But
I can't name one who hasn't.
Yeah,
that woman, sure, not all men, but yes, all women. Like I don't know that
true.
Woman. So when guys are like gobsmacked that I've been raped, I'm like, what, babe? Welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like not that it's sure, not every single woman has been, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And when it comes to asking them questions as well, I feel like it's important for clients to know that most of the time we're just trying to make conversation. Like I've had a couple of times where I said, oh, so what do you do for work? And I'm always happy for vague answers. I'm happy for people to say, every time I go to Canberra, they go, oh, I'm a public servant. And if they say that, I go, okay, cool. That means don't ask any more questions. If somebody gives a really vague answer, I'm like, radio, they don't want me to know. That's fine. But a couple of times I've had people be like, and I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to stalk you. I'm literally just trying to, initiate conversation and make this a comfortable, safe space. Like, I don't need to know your address and,
I think when it comes to the public servants, it's probably just that their jobs are boring more than they don't want to tell you. But yeah, I agree. I think vague is fine. I don't know. I'm super nosy though. I do like to know. Like, do tell me all your details if you want to share. I love that. But yeah, not if you're uncomfortable. Then you can have boundaries as well. That's fine. We don't owe me, any of your personal life details. That's fine.
But also, if I've had occasionally people who don't want to give over any information. And then it's very difficult to talk.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to fill the silence.
Like, what do we talk about?
I say, so do you have a partner? And they just go, And I go, oh, okay, sensitive subject. I go, what do you do? What kind of area do you work in? And they go, and I'm like, oh, fuck. When you don't know someone, you got to start somewhere.
When it comes to the end of a booking, we both believe that it's the provider's job to keep an eye on the time and to indicate when things are due to wrap up. I personally will let you know when it is time to leave. I'll do that by saying, would you like to jump in the shower? I'll stand at the door. I'll do all the things that sort of indicate to you that it's time to get moving. I'll jump in the shower myself. Things like that are usually a good idea that I'm saying it's time to leave. Or I'll straight up just say, all right, it's time for me to kick you out. I'm pretty open and honest about it. I don't like to have to tell you twice. That's pretty awkward. But if we are sitting there wrapped up in each other's arms and we're still talking and we're running a little bit over, I'm aware. That's my choice. If you need to be somewhere, let me know. That's just how I do things. That's not for everyone by any means.
Yeah, for me, like if I don't have anything on immediately after the booking and I'm really enjoying the conversation, then I might go a little bit over time on my own terms. And that's totally cool. Generally for me, I'm not going to go over time in terms of sexual stuff, but if I'm enjoying the chat, if I'm enjoying the cuddle, then usually if I'm having a nice time, then I want to keep it going. As you said, like I do, if somebody has to go somewhere, then you're going to have to say, sorry, I need to get going, because I obviously don't want to like hold you up for no reason. But a lot of the time I do have other stuff on. I have a number of things that I volunteer for, and I have other bookings and I have family. It's not unusual for my husband to be waiting in his car around the corner, busting to use the loo, just waiting for my booking that was supposed to finish at 4 and it's already 4:10, so I'm there going, oh God, my poor husband is, it's his house. So both of us have been known to do that on occasion, depending on what's going on and how we're feeling. But the reality is that if you have booked a 1-hour appointment at 1:00, then that appointment finishes at 2:00. And realistically, your time is up at 2. And so I'm the same as you, Holly. I would be like, okay, did you want to grab a shower before you go? I'll stand up. I'll stand near the door. I'll start tidying up the sheets. I'm giving cues. And I understand that not everybody is as comfortable or as proficient at reading social cues like that. But it is kind of difficult, particularly in such an intimate service, for us to be like, okay, leave now. It's hard to be too direct for a lot of us. I know that I just have to be more direct, I guess, but I find it difficult. And I also feel like standing up and holding the door open is pretty fucking direct. And this ties back around to one of the first things we talked about, which was people turning up early. There have been times when I've been on tour and the booking was supposed to finish at 4. It's 4:15 and the client is still putting on his second shoe. He started putting on his first shoe a good 7 minutes ago. I don't know what happened between those two things. Yes. I'm running around trying to fix up my hair and makeup. I've got to put all my sheets in the wash. I've got to put new sheets on. And then I get a message, oh, I'm here because my next client's turned up 15 minutes early. And I'm like, well, fuck. There goes the snack I was going to grab in between bookings. Guess I don't get dinner tonight. And I hope they don't have a weird encounter in the elevator where they sort of go, are you Jenna? It's just,
I definitely relate on the putting the shoes on thing. I don't know if men have some sort of thing when it comes to shoes.
And socks. They take forever to put socks on. Whack them on. Get them on. Thing. What are you doing?
Yeah. I've definitely had a lot of clients that seem to take a long time to get dressed, and I'm definitely not rushing you. Often in my case, I'm not in a rush because I'm not touring and things like that. I'm pretty casual with that. But I am like, wow, it does take you a very long time to put on 4 items of clothing. Generally, my clients are pretty in tune with what I'm indicating. And as I said, if I'm hanging on to you and engrossed in the conversation, then you can probably assume that I'm pretty comfortable with the conversation continuing for a little bit longer. But if I'm getting up and moving things around and saying, okay, well, then that's probably time to get moving. I think in terms of getting people to leave, the most frustrating thing for me is when people are actually finally getting dressed and moving, and it's all good, and I have a little bit of conversation with them while they're doing that, and they keep stopping getting dressed or stopping leaving to have the conversation. And like, obviously I love talking to you, but I really want you to start to get moving by that point. So please just keep getting dressed and yeah.
Because you don't want to just be in silence while they're getting dressed, right? So you try and sort of fill this, like you might say, oh, what are you doing after this? Or just that kind of, filler chat. And then they stop and then they tell you what they're doing afterwards. And you're like, that's lovely, but I wasn't really asking what you're doing. Like, the priority right now is the shoelaces.
Yes.
And if you happen to tell me about the rest of your weekend, then cool. But let's just focus on the shoelaces.
I know. Sometimes I feel like a parent chasing a child. I sort of feel like I have to go, come on, back with the shoes, get the shoes on. And I don't want to feel like that. And this is their massive exception to the rule. As always, the majority of my clients are wonderful and they're doing the right thing. But there's just a couple where I'm like, did you forget? Don't sit down again. Don't sit down. I keep getting ready.
So that brings us to the end of this episode and also to the end of season 1 of Somebody You Love. Thank you so much for being here with us on this journey thus far. If you are hanging out and over the next couple of weeks you are desperate to listen to more of us talking shit, then you should join our Patreon. Speaking of, we have some wonderful patrons that we would like to thank today.
Thank you to our new generous somebody, Lulu.
Our even more generous somebodies are Timmy, Andrew, Adam Smith, Leo, Lachlan, Sub London, Miss Billy, Nora Knightley, Leslie, Scott Watson, Andrew, Big M, Our Secret Admirer, Mudgy, Margaret, Wheezy, John T, Celeste, Ellen, Liam, and Fritz Your Tits.
Our extremely generous somebodies are Aaron, Samuel, Andrew, Pete, Theodore Betts the First Esquire, Amanda Valentina, Sienna Saint, Brino, Ad Amor, and Nick.
We also now have the option for annual memberships on Patreon, which give you a 10% discount. So you get like a month and a bit free. So that might be an option if you want to save on regular transaction fees, and also just if you're a bit of a Somebody You Love lifer.
Thanks for your amazing support this season. We have been so overwhelmed by how wonderful you've all been, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
See you in season 2. Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.